Yo, how's it going? I'm a simple guy. I eat cereal for dinner, have a vendetta against homework, and I love anime and manga. And in the past 10 or so years, there have been so many good anime to come and go, following in the footsteps of the OGs, who either have ended or just won't die. Also, did you guys hear that Yoshihiro Togashi is going to be working on Hunter x Hunter again? Allegedly. Now all I'm waiting for is Inoue to return to Vagabond, and I will truly have no enemies. But I love the new gen anime that we've been getting. But there's usually one problem with these animes: they're so damn behind. I watch one season, go online, and I find out that there's been 3 seasons leaked in black and white in a picture book format, just waiting for me to read it. So when I started catching up with these manga, I realized something. A lot of these new gen manga that I love have a similar thing in common. They're rough and sketchy art styles. I was going to title this video something like the sketchy art in manga, but I realized that that would sound like I'm roasting the art, when really this is another episode of Ace Attorney Taffy defending art because he has nothing better to do. But yeah, I would suggest you find somewhere cozy to watch this, maybe get some beverages, so we can just talk about manga for a little bit. Also, I might actually just call this sketchy manga art, who cares? Now to start, I had to go with not only one of the best new gen mangas to come out ever, but one of the best series to come out of all time. Attack on Titan set a whole new standard when it comes to storytelling in manga, both through Isayama's writing and his artwork. Isayama has said how he pitched the manga to many different shonen manga publications, and was actually rejected multiple times due to his somewhat unorthodox style of rough sketchy line work, which wasn't what many publishers considered to be good. I mean, you can see that Isayama isn't 100% there when looking at the early art of Attack on Titan, and he talks about how he even put himself down over his artwork, which, let's not even lie, all of us artists have been there. I mean, look at this character model, it's so trash! Which is actually pretty sad when considering that his art in the very first chapter was very good for the most part, and if you really want to see anything bad, then you kind of just have to nitpick at the art. But now when you look at the artwork in the most recent chapters of the manga, we can see that Isayama still holds on to his rough, sketchy style of art. His technical skills and anatomy work have improved tremendously, and I personally would call the artwork in the final chapters of AOT a flippin' masterpiece. However, he still holds on to that sketchy, wetchy line work style, and I love it. Mangakas tend to have a team of assistants to help them with the workload of creating a manga that's serialized weekly, and usually these assistants train to work with very clean styles, so this meant that Isayama's assistants had to adapt their work in a very unorthodox way to help create this manga. Another thing I like about Attack on Titan's art is that it uses these rough lines in almost any context, and it kind of adds more life to the art in my opinion. Like, every page has like a little motion blur. A lot of the time manga in general will use rough, fast, or sketched lines to illustrate motion or to add some sort of dramatic shading to a scene. Like here with the Colossal Titan. This stuff right here is called hatching to all the non-artists here, and it's mostly seen when there's an intense dramatic scene going on in manga. But even the outline of characters in this regular dialogue scene can be seen as very rough actually, because you can see that the pen has probably outlined the character multiple times, rather than how usually in manga panels with less action, the pen will draw over the pencil in small quantities with large strokes. Shut up, but Isayama just breaks the rules because he's like that, and I hope he's somewhere chilling right now. Maybe he's with J. Cole on the beach, cooking up their next few bangers whilst they're at peace with life right now. But speaking of the opposite of that, let's talk about our next subject matter. Okay, so we're going to be talking about my favorite manga of 2 years, so if I get a little sidetracked, I apologize in advance. Chainsaw Man is the second manga series created by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who actually might be an insane person. Not only is the content of Chainsaw Man very, questionable when it's taken out of context, but his early one-shots show his weird kind of style and interests, and even some of the activities that Fujimoto takes place in real life outside of his work are just bizarre. Like, he made a whole song singing about his favorite food. This shit's phenomenal. I don't know how this man is so naturally talented. He made a hood classic manga, a hood classic anime, and a song? That's why he's the GOAT! He also made a video of himself where he tries to levitate and fails. Nice shot! But to be fair, he hit a nice 5-star frog splash motion there. But he did fail to stay in the air, so. I mean, he was only missing a couple steps, such as thinking a happy thought and listening to I Love You, I Hate You by Playboi Carti. I also heard that there was a time where he pretended to be his little sister on Twitter for some reason. I tried to find the evidence, but I couldn't. But here's a clip of this guy who also makes manga who was talking about it. Anyways, the reason why I ranted about Fujimoto's digital footprint for so long is because I wanted to let you guys know that he's a crazy person, and he also kind of draws like a crazy person, and it's amazing. Fujimoto's art is digital, unlike the early work of Attack on Titan, which streamlines the manga creating process quite a lot, since if you make mistakes, you can just undo it within a split second and keep on going. Whereas when you're using ink, oh shit! And with the advancement in art software, brushes can even emulate the grit and grease of ink on paper. We truly do live in the future. But unlike a lot of other digitally made manga, Fujimoto's work is very messy, and the line work is kind of just all over the place. Like, this is on a completely different level to the early art of Attack on Titan. The line art doesn't even connect some of the times, and when they do, Fujimoto and his assistants will go over them one or more times just to add, I don't know, a little some to make it look better. Unlike Isayama though, the art of Tatsuki Fujimoto shows extreme skill in his early work when it comes to the characters and anatomy, which is a thing that Isayama sort of struggled with, and using certain techniques such as his use of 5-point perspective multiple times, which is just mind-blowing. And whenever there's a big panel showcasing the backgrounds, somehow he and his team create art on the level of the splash pages from Naruto. The art is so full, the cities never feel empty, and everything's textured with the brush instead of relying on screen tones alone. Using screen tones isn't a bad thing at all. I think you can get really creative and make awesome things with it, but I think that creating textures by hand is just a little more impressive and to my liking due to its need for such great intricacy. But then, in another panel right after, we'll see art like this. And for some reason, I mess with it. You see what I did there? Yeah, no, I'm sorry, that wasn't a good joke. But the thing is, you wouldn't think that the same person made this, even though the art style is completely the same, because of the skill levels portrayed so differently in these two pages. Because he is a mad genius. Now guys, once again, this art is very sketchy and rough, but in no way is it bad. The anatomy is very good, and the framing of his panels are extremely cinematic, which I think caters for the rough nature of the art, especially in action scenes where the panels are laid out so the action is popping out of the frame and towards the reader, or sometimes where it's just a shot from the side, kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. And there's also just a million lines used to create one character, which is kind of cool. The only problem I really have with Fujimoto's action scenes though is the fact that they can get so chaotic from the line work that I almost don't know what's going on. And also the fights just tend to be pretty gruesome, so yeah, I don't know. It's up to you if you want to read it, but you really should. Fujimoto's other manga series, Fire Punch, also shows to have very similar tropes, which, yeah, is obvious because the same creator made this work, but I haven't read Fire Punch yet, so I won't comment on it too much. Just look at this cool art that I've seen real quick. I mean, just wow. Now finally, I'm going to talk about rough and sketchy manga art that probably can be described as bad art. But I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one. I'm talking about One Punch Man. Nah, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the original One Punch Man from 2009. If you thought that Fujimoto's art was really rough or loose, then you definitely haven't heard of One. One is the anonymous mangaka behind both One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100. If you're thinking of the One Punch Man that's considered to have some of the greatest and cleanest manga art of all time, then you'd be thinking of Yusuke Murata's adaptation of One Punch Man. But One started releasing the series online as a webcomic, and then eventually gained so much traction that Murata decided to adapt it. One has gone through several hiatuses with the original webcomic, most likely because he can always take the writer stance with Murata's manga adaptation. The last update that One has made for the webcomic up to this video's release was on January 4th of 2024, and if you look at the newest chapters of the art, you can see leaps of improvement in One's work. To be fair, he's been drawing the comic for nearly 15 years, so if he wasn't improving, then that would be very weird. But I find it so interesting to see his clear lack in skills when it comes to his anatomy, which makes it look like he tried to draw this manga blindfolded. But seeing him still having this rough sketchbook style, but with better framing of the panels and character blocking, and better understanding of anatomy and how to draw emotions as well, is just, it's so cool to see. But some of the newer art I think has been redrawn, so I don't actually know if I can use some of it as proper evidence for One's art progression. But the art that I show is what I think was drawn by him most recently, and if it isn't, let me know in the comments. In his early work, his characters looked a little bit lifeless, which works very well for Saitama's character, and I think that's why Murata decided to keep Saitama's bland facial expressions, which also followed their way over into the anime. However, unlike the previous mangaka I mentioned, One isn't as skilled when it comes to drawing backgrounds. as he is able to draw decent scenery, but it clearly isn't to the level that Attack on Titan or Chainsaw Man is at. But the reason why I wanted to end this video with one is because I wanted to let any of you guys who are doubting your artistic ability know that you should never give up. Just because you're progressing slower than someone else doesn't mean that you're not progressing at all. If everybody had the same art style and levels of progression, then the manga industry would be just like the webtoon industry. Sorry if that was a cheap shot, I actually like a lot of webtoons. But there's like hundreds of these isekai action webtoons which all look exactly the same, and it's annoying. But if you look at all three of the mangaka that I highlighted today, you can identify the differences between them instantly, even though they all have similar tropes of using sketchy line work. Never give up on your goals, whatever they are. Even if they're as messed up as Denji's. Okay, maybe that one's a bit crazy, but as long as you're respectful and you do your best, you will eventually succeed and get better at what you're doing. Look at One. I'm not even trying to roast him, but his art was trash. And he's now one of the most successful and probably one of the most well-known manga writers out there right now. And speaking of progression, I think it's time to upgrade from this 3D model. I've been cooking up a new fit in the lab and I think it's time to reveal it to you guys. So farewell to the taffy with the green hoodie, the blue, whatever these are called, and the iconic red beanie. It's been a great 2 years having you, and this isn't a permanent goodbye, but I guess it's a see you later until I make a nicer remake of this design. But since it's summertime, let's introduce Summer Boy Taff. I'm just gonna call it this for now. I just realized I only used that 3D model for like 3 videos and it was shit, so forget it ever existed. Look at my new art style. Look at it. Acknowledge me. Okay, that's enough yapping. See you next time. 好きなカレーカツカレー好きな後半コシヒカリ僕ら生きてる